Hi, I'm Zach with Elevated Comfort, and today we're going to be going over an HVAC safety and efficiency service. Have you ever had your HVAC equipment assessed? Do you understand what's involved with an HVAC assessment? Today we're going to touch base on a few things that Elevated Comfort does when we're going through your heating and air conditioning system as well as your ventilation. So here we have a 90% furnace. Not all furnaces are the same shape, same size, same type. So this here is a high efficient model. And today I'm going to be pointing out a few things and explaining what their functions are and how they operate. So we'll start with the operation sequence. So what's going to be happening first is we're going to be going to the thermostat. Just imagine there's a nice little thermostat here. And we're going to call for heat. So we're going to ask the thermostat to start warming the house. The machine is going to fire. So what I'll be testing is making sure that the sequence of operations are proper. So first we're going to have our draft-induced motor. This is a motor that's going to be pulling all of our emissions and flames through what's called the heat exchanger, which we'll talk about a little bit later. When the heat comes through that heat exchanger, it then comes through this draft-induced motor and is then exited from the home. So not only is this part of efficiency, but this is part of safety. So this is the first motor that turns on with the heater. Okay. The next sequence that's going to happen is it's going to detect that this system is in a negative pressure with pressure switches. Again, this is all safety, and we're going to make sure that your equipment is running safely for your home. When the pressure switch is closed, we are then going to call for a hot surface igniter. It's an element that glows red hot, so when the gas passes across it, it lights a flame. This isn't the 1950s anymore. We don't have pilot lights, so everything, gas, everything is off until it's called for heat. Once the hot surface igniter has glown red hot, the gas valve then releases gas. Flames will appear. The last part of safety in the gas section is called a flame sensor. Those do need to be maintained. A lot of times we go out to homes and they do not have heat because of lack of maintenance. This is something that we want to be looking at. So a flame sensor is a rod that is right in the zone of the flame. So it's going to detect the heat. Over time, they can build up carbon and soot and such, and they do not make that connection, and it won't allow the furnace to work. Reason being is if it does not light a flame and we don't have heat going across that hot surface igniter, it is not going to allow the system to just continuously push out raw gas into your home. So it shuts the gas valve off, puts itself into an air, and then you give Elevated Comfort a call. Once we have confirmed flame, the unit will run and heat for 20 to 30 seconds. And then down here, we're going to have a blower motor that's going to turn on. We are now going to be pulling cold air from the inside of the home through the filter in your return air grill, whether that may be underneath the furnace, in a closet, in a hallway. It is going to be the big grill. So we're going to bring cold air in through the return. It's going to come up right across that heat exchanger. That heat exchanger is very hot. So now that's how we're going to be heating our air. Once the air has come across the heat exchanger, we then bring it in through all the supply vents into every single room in the house. So that is a sequence of operations for a furnace. Now, when we're servicing, we are going to make sure that there's no potentials for carbon monoxide leaks, no gas leaks. Okay, so those are things that we'll be looking for. We'll also be testing every part to manufacturer spec. So every part does have a value. Take, for instance, this first motor that turns on. This is a draft-induced motor. This draft-induced motor does have a rated amp draw. So if we have achieved or nearing that amp draw, that might be something we'll bring to your attention as far as a preventative maintenance repair, or hey, let's monitor this for the next few years and see how it's operating. If the motor has achieved the max LRA or the fluid load running amps, there is a potential of that motor burning out and not operating. So those are things that we're looking for. We want to make sure that you are going to be comfortable when you need it. This model here is high efficient, very smart. It does not have your standard capacitors like an 80% single stage basic furnace does. With those capacitors, they look like this. Big motors use a lot of power to get started. On this capacitor, this is a 15 microfarad capacitor plus or minus 6%. So the manufacturer says that this value is good for plus or minus 6%. So those are things that we test. If they're coming out of range but they're still operating, we'll provide you with a preventative maintenance repair. If it's in range, we give it a green check, which we'll talk about in a little bit. We also inspect your control board. So this is the motherboard, the control board. This is what does all of the functions from the thermostat, the furnace, the air conditioning, the dual fuel, the heat pumps. Everything has a control board. We're going to inspect and make sure all the wiring is safe and intact. We're going to make sure that there's no potential water damage on it. Silly enough, but this furnace does make water. So it's a high efficient model. The exhausts are cool enough to where it will condensate and run back in, and there's drains throughout the system. So we want to make sure all the drains are intact and not leaking, because it could damage further components within the unit. So after we've inspected, we've ensured proper voltage through the unit, we'll give that a green check as well. Every unit does have a temp rise, so we will be checking to making sure out of the vents or between the return and the supply on the system that the machine is not overheating. It's not making too much heat. So we'll be testing the difference in between the intake air and the supply air and making adjustments if needed, as well as checking your gas pressures while we're in the home, which is good because we don't want to overheat the machine, but we also don't want to overspend on our utility bills. So we'll make sure that it's running safely and efficiently for you. And I believe that is all that we really have for the gas furnace as far as the sequence of operations and how it is that we look through the furnace for you. We'll change your filter. We're going to come in, we're going to clean every component within the furnace. We're going to ensure that your blower motor and its wheel are nice and clean. That's going to help build efficiency. When that blower wheel starts building up dirt, it drags the air. We lose the efficiency of the airflow, which over time will put more stress on the blower motor, which can lead to failure, and also puts a lot more stress on the heat exchanger, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So when we're done with our HVAC assessment, we're not just going to come into the home and tell you, oh, this is this reading, and this is how it's looking, and this is how it's operating. Yeah, it's safe for now. We're going to provide you with an HVAC maintenance tune-up checklist. We are going to be grading every component within the system, green, yellow, or red. Green is good, yellow needs attention, red is failed or is failing. And we'll make our recommendations from there as far as safety and preventative maintenance repairs. So we have 101 areas that we're going to be looking within your system, and that's going to be from ductwork to furnace to air conditioning to heat pumps to air handlers. We're very involved, and we like to involve you as well. So if you have time, we always like to come out and do a little show and tell, and to be able to explain the functions of each motor, why it's operating that way, and what we could do to improve it. This is something that we fill out and we leave with you for your records. We take a photo for our records. So why getting an annual inspection is really important for the equipment and yourself is, one, we're going to make sure that the equipment's operating properly. It's going to be running efficiently, and it's going to be running safely for the home. Second, if you have a newer piece of equipment, we all know it's pretty expensive. You buy a new car, you have the car serviced, your warranties are active. Similar with a furnace or air conditioning or heat pump system. We want to make sure that we're maintaining it every single year, so that way we can get all 20 years plus out of life expectancy out of the equipment. If we're not maintaining the equipment, you could have failures as soon as 10 years. The equipment might only last 15 years, and now you're talking about replacement again. So maintenance every year, annually, is going to get you that 20 plus. It's going to make sure that your family's safe and that your family's comfortable. If you would like to ensure the safety of the equipment for the home and make sure that it's operating as efficient as possible, give Elevated Comfort a call today, and we'll schedule you for your HVAC assessment. So part of the inspections that we always do, back to the safety on your furnace, is we're going to make sure that there's no potential leaks for carbon monoxide. This is the heat exchanger that I was talking about. Now, it does look a little bit different depending on which brand and which type of furnace you have. This is out of an 80% single stage furnace. This is where all of the flames come into the heat exchanger. They then go through the baffles, which in this case, this system has 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we have 5 cells that we need to efficiently inspect to ensure the safety of the home. Once the heat and the flames have come through, they are now going to exit through this section here, which ties back into this draft-induced motor, which will then suck all those emissions, all of that heat, and shove it out of the home. Okay? So what we're looking for is any areas of concern. So here we can see the metal is turning white, okay? We do have some really dark marks here. That's called scorching. So this is where a lot of concentrated heat is discoloring the metal of your heat exchanger. So when I pull a heat exchanger, I like to do show and tell. I want you to come out, I want you to touch it, feel it, get an understanding. To make it easier, I always circle the areas of concern, okay? So in this case, on this furnace is going to be the scorching. So I have inspected this heat exchanger and there are no failures as far as cracks or rusting holes. So this is going to be safe to continual use. But the concern is going to be the scorching. Easiest way to explain it, we're driving a car down the highway with bald tires. We know we shouldn't be. We know it's time to replace them. If that tire pops, we could have an accident, right? Dangerous. So that's just what we like to inform about, is just saying, hey, we're getting close. You know, we need to make sure we maintenance this every year and make sure that the family's safe.